Disasters can happen at any time with very little and sometimes no warning. Hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, flood, volcanoes, tornadoes, and fire are a fresh reminder that hazards can strike at any time, and no area of the country is immune. Whenever a hazard is approaching or occurring, take the necessary precautions to keep you and your family safe and sound. Pay close attention to all bulletins and updates from the Department of Emergency Management, and make sure you have an adequate supply of non-perishable items, medication, and plenty of water, as well as knowing the location of your nearest emergency shelter. Disasters can occur in the blink of an eye. The right precautions could save your life. Prepare and be aware. This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.
Good evening and welcome to the program Real Talk in the Face of Danger, organized by the Department of Emergency Management in Barbados. My name is Andria, Grosvenor, Planning and Business Development Manager at the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA. In just a few days, the 2019 hurricane season will be officially closed. During this period, Barbados has been under tropical storm warning and have experienced some effects of tropical disturbances. We know that these are not the only hazards we face, but we also experience fires, landslides, and other hazards such as earthquakes and tsunamis. So tonight, we want to have real talk in the face of danger. And joining me for this conversation is an esteemed panel of lovely ladies and some nice young gentlemen. Allow me to introduce Miss Kerry Hinds. She is the Director of the Department of Emergency Management, where she's worked for the past 19 years. Miss Hinds is on my immediate left. Miss Hinds completed a Master of Science degree in Crisis, Risk, and Emergency Management at the George Washington University in 2005, and she's also a trained, experienced, and dynamic disaster risk manager and strategist who specializes in contingency plan development and policy development.
Good night, Ms. Grosvenor. Good night to the panel and good night to Barbados. It is definitely a pleasure being here tonight.
Oh, wonderful. Next to her is seated Mr. Marcus Myers. Mr. Marcus Myers is a 28-year-old broadcaster, producer, and podcaster. He is the producer and host of the popular video podcast INO, an environmental internet series, Research and Some Sense. Marcus is also a local actor who held a role in a stage play entitled Simone's Place. Marcus, welcome.
Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be here. I wish my bio was as good as hers, but I'll take it, you know. I could have been the Chief Executive Officer of INO Productions or something, but no, it's a YouTube channel on YouTube like everybody else. That's really what it is. You made it so fancy though, but it's not.
Okay, but Marcus, I think you have a really great following, so that's important, especially for such a broadcast as this. And then to my immediate right, I have Miss Margo Nicholls. Margo Nicholls is a former District Emergency Organization Chairman for 10 years, and she's been a member of that DEO for approximately 19 years. Being a member of the DEO has taught Margo that volunteerism is very important to the community and the country. As a volunteer, she has received training, both regionally and internationally, in various areas such as disaster management, climate change adaptation in community areas, health, logistics, and emergency care and treatment. Margo, welcome to you too.
Welcome and good night to Barbados. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, okay, great. And Mr. Kevon Campbell. He is a disaster management practitioner who is attached to CDEMA as a logistics specialist. Before this, he worked in the National Disaster Office of Trinidad and Tobago for 5 years and at an overseas development agency in London, England. He has a master's degree in crisis and disaster management and a Bachelor of Science degree in geography. He enjoys adventure, traveling, and living an active lifestyle.
That's right. Thank you for having me. Barbados, thank you for having me. And I'm thrilled to be part of this discussion going forward.
Excellent. We also are pleased to have with us Mr. Jerry Miller. He's not a panelist, but he's doing a very important job tonight as he's providing interpretation via sign language for the deaf community. So we also want to recognize Mr. Miller.
Jerry.
Well, members of the public who are with us tonight online, You can certainly send in any questions that you have, because we want to have a real talk. We want to answer your questions. We want to be responsive to you, and we want that at the end of this conversation that you yourself will know how to be better prepared, and some of those very burning questions that you don't always have the opportunity to answer, have answered, that you can ask us, and we'll be able to provide some feedback to you. So first of all, Ms. Hinds, we'll start with you. What is the role of the Department of Emergency Management?
Well, the Department of Emergency Management is responsible for the National Emergency Management Program and coordinating that program. We are a governmental office, and we have been given that mandate. We pull together all the various emergency services so they can effect a response. We do public awareness as it relates to emergency management, and we give technical advice and guidance to anyone as it relates to emergency management in Barbados. So that is it in a nutshell.
Okay, all right. Kevon, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Now, we understand that you have experienced an earthquake firsthand and also a flood event. Can you kindly tell us about that, about your experience?
Yes, I did. Last year I was in Trinidad and experienced an earthquake that the UE Seismic Research Center measured as a magnitude 6.9 event. The epicenter was in Venezuela, close to the state of Sucre. And as a matter of fact, I was actually home at that point in time because it was after work. And it occurred around 5:30 in the evening. And at that time, it happened, I felt the intensity, I felt the ground shake, and I took cover under the table, held on. And when it was completed, assessed my structure, made sure the family was okay, and I made it to work to be part of our Emergency Operations Center. So that's part of my job. And also for the flood event, at the period of 3 days in October last year, the nation received a month's worth of rainfall in those 3 days. And it made torrential downpours and excess flooding in certain areas within the country. And again, I was actually in work and activated yet again, and I functioned as my job in the NUC, and yeah, that has been my experience.
Okay, so with that earthquake, did you do the DCH?
I actually did, yes.
Okay,
I
duck, cover, and hold on.
Yeah, hazards are my life, really. I love learning about hazards, and it came natural to practice that because you think safety priority, safety first hand, and that's what I did.
Okay, wonderful. We actually have a question early. Ms. Hinds, is really for you, following up on that introduction that you would have given to us on the DEM. It asks, what does the DEM do outside of the hurricane season?
I would have anticipated a question like that. Thanks for the question. The Department of Emergency Management has a mandate, comprehensive disaster management. And within that, that means we deal with multiple hazards, not just the hurricane hazard. You would note that we have a pervasive public awareness program, and we ensure that the public is aware of how to deal with for example, the tsunami hazard or the earthquake hazard. We looked at many man-made hazards. We have a program, a very robust program, I would say, with respect to public awareness in the schools and awareness in the schools, as well as going out there and training persons within the various businesses, churches, faith-based organizations. We have what I would call a very good community program as well. Margo is one of the recipients of training and stuff. We have 30 district emergency organizations that keep us very busy. helping to really build that awareness of disaster management in the community, build the awareness of hazards, how to deal with the hazards when they do occur. I know a number of people may know that we also deal with what we call mass crowd operations. So you will see our officers decked out at crop over time. We ensure that there is a level of response if something occurs as a result of any of what we call these mass crowd events. So it can be crop over, you may see us at Reggae on the Hill, a number of events. And as you well know, Barbados, the calendar of events in Barbados, tremendous. So we do work all year round. And of course, we always, as I said before, there is a level of persons always come to us for emergency management information to help them with their plans and procedures. And from time to time, we have to contribute to the emergency management or disaster risk management dialogue, not only at the national level, but at the regional and global level. So we make contributions at various workshops. So we have a number of activities throughout the year. It's a small staff, but at the end of the day, that's why we have persons like Margo to assist us, and that's why we're calling for additional persons out there in Barbados to come and assist with the program, because it's a huge mandate. So we're not closed for business 6 months of the year. We are open for business 12 months of the year, and trust me, it's a lot of work.
Okay, all right. So when people say to you, hurricane season coming up, that your busy time coming up, it's not really you,
No.
right? It's
My busy time is all year round.
all year round.
All year
Okay,
round.
so you get that. It's the busyness all year around, not just during the hurricane season. So Margo, Ms. Hinds have talked a lot about the involvement that you have had in the DEO. Certainly this is a very important organization. And I would like you to share with us your DEO experiences, the role, how did you get involved, how it has benefited you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the DEO, sometime back in the early 90s, Mr. Lord, it was zero at the BNB building. And as an employee of the ministry, the staff was even smaller than it is now. So my permanent secretary back then said, well, you have to go and assist, do clerical work. So when I got there, I said, this is something I like. So I know that as soon as anything happens or about to happen, I know my function, I have to go over to zero. My first experience was 2002, Lily. So I did Lily, I did Ivan.
Thomas.
We were all in that building at the National Bank. And that building, I remember it raining and the water is coming through. But you are in this building, you are supposed to assist Barbados, but you are full of water too. That experience was very horrific. I remember I had to sleep on the floor. Now we have cots now. Then Mr. Lawrence said to me, you should join the DEO. And we had an interim chair, and during the process of the time, he had to step aside. So I said, no, community work is important. Based on what I'm seeing, community work is important. So I stepped ahead and became the chair. I sat there for 10 years. Now, being a chairperson is a non-paying business. You have to like it to be in it. You have to make decisions, and once you have a family, you have to prepare for that family also. So from then, DEO was me. Disaster, when I see rain set up, mass casualty, mass crowd event, there you see Margo. The worst thing about it is trying to get the public understand that they have to be responsible for themselves, which makes the job lighter for government. Because one of the things as a chairperson you should know is your community. And if you can get, now we don't segregate, we take any person because we are asking for this assistance. And if I live one side of Barbados or one side of St. Philip or St. George, and you live in another part, at least if something happened in your area, you should be able to tell me. Now, when DEM call, we know exactly where to send them. So they won't waste time. Now, I always say everything happens in the community. So who gets there first?
The community.
So you can't sit and wait on DEM or police or fire. You have to mitigate. Now, as Ms. Hinds had said, the first 6 months of the year, it's constant training. So much training that by June, training is still going on. Because you cannot wait until June to do this training. You will be caught off guard. And a lot of people really do think that DEM don't do anything between January and May. No. I don't know. I always say these days that there's no hurricane season anymore because sometimes we get excessive rain outside the hurricane season. You still have to deal with that. But in training, I would have done excessive training both as far as China.
Oh, okay.
British Virgin Islands, yes, British Virgin Islands, and it's not just disaster training because when I did training in British Virgin Islands, that was more leadership and personnel training.
Leadership, yes.
Correct. Trinidad, the training in Trinidad was more for how to deal with unexpected, especially if you live uphill and you don't know when things are happening and it just comes on you.
Okay.
But in China dealt with, I went to China a couple of weeks after the Sichuan earthquake. Now, we talking, but when I saw what the Chinese government do and how they operate, we operate the same way. So we are just a dot, but we have all that knowledge.
Oh, that's wonderful. Marcus, let me bring you into this conversation.
Great. I was waiting my turn. Like in the bike line or something. I was like, okay.
The best for last.
I don't know about that.
So I just want to find out, as a young person, what's your perspective on disaster risk management?
I think it's complicated, and I also think that Barbados is in a very unique position. Not only literally in a unique position, the fact that we have these near misses. I don't know any other countries, if you can tell me, that have, like, not only have we not been hit like directly for such a long time, but also we have, like, once per year, we have these near misses of these systems it looks like they're coming and then they divert. And we're in a very unique position, and we're very fortunate that we're in this position. However, I feel as though we are burdened with the challenge of communicating to people to get ready for something they've never been exposed to. So those two things together makes it even more difficult for Bajans and Bajans that are in charge of messaging to deliver this message to the public. Like, it's not in, like, the United States, in my opinion, it's not like the United States or somewhere else where you're accustomed to tornadoes or hurricanes or storms or even like an earthquake, where you understand that you're at the mercy of the elements. There is no other place, I can't think of anyone like this. So, yeah, I find it difficult, but I think that if the message is delivered correctly, the youth mobilize, right? And for example, I worked with the Walk for the Cure this year and last year, and I think we recorded 25,000 people came out to walk for breast cancer, and that was recorded people that had the shirts at home that didn't feel like paying for the shirts, they came out too. That was another 10,000, right? So 10,000 people didn't pay for the shirts, but they still come, right? But the reason why so many people came out was because I can't think of anybody that has not been been touched by breast cancer in some way, right? If it's like 1 in every 8 women that, you know, at some point in time. So they come out when they understand what this is, the magnitude of what this is and how it can impact you. It is difficult for DEM to have a message. No, I do not think the government in general has utilized the mediums that at their disposal well. I don't think that the government has done a good job of using social media. We're in the social media age, and the way that we take in information now is completely different. So there could be a demographic that is interested in TV, right? That is easy to reach them because we've been doing that for so long, making TV advertisements for so long. But in terms of social media, this is a whole new world that I don't think that the government has put their foot on the gas in terms of really using social media. One of the ways that I'm thinking, now, the truth is that disaster, emergency management, etc., and natural disasters, it's not sexy, right? It's not like food. It's not something that people like to see, you know, but it's something that people need to know. So I think you need to find a way to use certain vehicles to kind of get the message aboard, and then kind of use that message to use that vehicle to kind of, you know. But I don't think the government has done the greatest job in letting young people kind of in on things, just because of the packaging. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much for that feedback. I know you've talked about using the social media platforms, but would you want to recommend any other ways that you think that the programming can potentially be improved?
Any other ways? I think the youth needs incentives.
Okay.
They need something in terms of like, and I mean, and this is like very simple, but like do this and win a phone day, like something like that, right? That will do a lot in just kind of training and positive reinforcement, rewarding them for doing something that they're not usually accustomed to doing. I think that is one way that it can be done, and it needs to be done more so because of all the points I just made. So yeah.
Okay, great. It's very interesting because even as we talk about the volunteerism and we talked about the youth and the fact that youth can really be wonderful volunteers. So they have the energy, they have the ideas. Even with CDEMA, we have the CDM youth, and they tell you that they're not just the future, they're the present. So that's very much a very notable point. But this is also the age of volunteerism. A lot of young people volunteer for a lot of causes.
Yes.
So this is really a great opportunity to get them involved in something like this, because we live with an environment that is prone to natural hazards as well as human-induced hazards. And your personal preparation and being able to mobilize both yourself and your family and your community is actually a great role that you can play that actually benefits also future generations. So this is actually a wonderful opportunity. We have a question here. What provisions have been made for persons with disabilities in the event of a national emergency?
Thanks for the question. The part of our planning, we try to be very inclusive, and we focus on the various vulnerable groups in the community. The disabled, we would have partnered with the Barbados Council for the Disabled, and we try to ensure that we have programs where we can learn from them. We ask them what it is that they require. Just because you're disabled, that doesn't mean that you can't do stuff for yourself. And as such, we partner with them. We bring them to the table when we're doing the disaster management planning, and we seek to find out what it is that they require, what resources they have available to them, and what resources we at the national level can offer them or contribute to ensuring their preparedness. So they are a part of our planning. We've sought to have some level of interface with the deaf community, persons with wheelchairs, any type of disability really. There at the national level, there's a Vulnerable Persons Committee, and we do a lot of our planning there. We, like the rest of the population, we educate them on where they can go in terms for sheltering purposes, what they need to have. It is very new to us though. It is an area that in the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years that we've really tried to focus on. The district emergency chairpersons, they would go to the community, they would identify the vulnerable persons in their area, and we encourage them to seek help within their own network, as well as where we can, we provide some level of assistance to them, whether that may be taking them to their family and friends for a shelter, providing them with the necessary information that they require to weather the storm. No pun intended, but really to weather that storm. I don't like to look at them as helpless because, for example, a couple, I think it was last month, we had a meeting with persons from the disabled community, and they even taught us something that we didn't even know. It is a really inspiring engagement.
Wonderful.
When we reach out to them and they say, well, no, you probably need to look at this way. We were doing some planning as it relates to tsunami preparedness, and we were looking at ways of how we can warn the disabled community, and they were just explaining to us all the different things that we can, probably techniques that we could use or equipment that we could utilize to assist them in their planning and their preparedness. Okay. So I think it is an area that we will continue. As I said, our program, we try to ensure that we have an inclusive program, and the idea is no one is left behind. Okay. Hazards will affect anyone, and the idea is that we pull the entire Barbados with us, because at the end of the day, we want everybody to be safe at it. Our mandate is public safety.
Okay, great,
Yeah.
fantastic. We do have a follow-up question here for you, if you can just answer it quickly for us. Has training been given to persons with disabilities through the department?
We have had, yes, we've had sensitization sessions. And in addition to that, we would have had a program a couple years ago, and we really need to continue with that, where we actually had training for the emergency responders who have to respond to the persons with disabilities. We had some sign language training. So various persons from within the emergency services, and by that I mean like police, fire, the district organizations, even the persons at the Department of Emergency Management. So we went through sign language classes. And then too, it was really an exchange, because then we sensitized them to disaster management and the various phases and what they should do to ensure that they're prepared and they can help themselves.
Okay, wonderful. I think I remember that program, All Hands on Deck.
All Hands on Deck. Okay,
yes,
yeah.
I do recall that program. A question for you, Kevon. The question is, based on your experience with the flooding that you talked about earlier, how has that changed your attitude towards preparations and warnings?
Now, the flood event, in terms of personally, I usually keep abreast, and I'm usually in tune with keeping my preparedness activities heightened. But in terms of the population, I think that it has struck a chord, because when you look at that event, the communities are impacted, in particular, and specifically Greenvale and Kelly Village. the water was so much that it created a severe problem in terms of evacuation and just in terms of getting in. So first responders had an enviable task with getting in and rescuing personnel. And in my opinion, you see an evidence that persons who look to construct their homes or persons looking to purchase homes, they do a bit more due diligence with respect to finding that location. Because as we know, land use planning is key in construction. And when you speak about land use planning, you speak about building your homes, whether it be close to vulnerable sites in watersheds or close to levees or close to floodplains. And that is not good because the soil is not good. And when you do receive a large volume of rainfall, it can be daunting. So I'm seeing where persons, they're doing a bit more homework in terms of where they would either construct or purchase housing. And that is important.
Can I ask a follow-up question? You mind?
Of
Do you mind?
course, not at all.
Okay, you know Blake Lowe just now. You sure? 'Cause
I have questions for you too,
Oh, really?
so go right ahead.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. But let me make sure that this one is a long-winded. I want to know. Do the youth know a lot about like how to kind of respond when these things happen in the face of danger in Trinidad?
Yeah, because they are the same equivalent office. They do a lot of trainings, a lot of seminars. They have groups that engage in teaching the youth and incorporating them in their local exercises. So the youth, they know, but sometimes when it happens, it can somewhat throw it off course a bit, meaning that you have, depending on where you are, the scenario in, it could be different because you could be in a different location, or you can be in an instance that you aren't in your normal spot. Maybe you're at school, maybe you're in transit. These things can all come into play when you look at that preparedness. But with respect to preparing the youth, yes, you have different programs, you have volunteer programs, and they mainly preach about preparedness in terms of having family plans and sort of stoking parents to be involved, because in my opinion, youth are the protagonists when you speak about disasters. They're the future. And if you can incorporate them, let them go home and let them influence their parents.
Yeah.
And that is happening. And it can be better, but it is happening where the youth, with their experience in terms of in school, you learn about this, and when you take it home, you pester your parents in a good way.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
I had a question for you again as well, Kevon, and also for you, right? I think you have a question for Kevon as well. But just one second, because this whole matter of personal preparation is a key point. So I want you to talk to the audience a little bit about, you know, like how do you go about your own personal preparation that will sort of encourage them or guide them on how they can go about theirs. And certainly I think that you can give some feedback as well to Marcus in terms of what you think is really needed, what are some of the things that young people should do. So for instance, I know that my son will whenever there's a threat of our system or anything like that, he takes care of all of the devices. So he ensures that things are charged, that there's a battery pack. He's very much concerned about that because as a young person. But I think that these are all things that we need to be able to share. So Kevon, first of all, and then Marcus.
Yes. I think first of all, individually and as part of family, you need to assess your surroundings. You need to do an assessment of your hazards, the risks, and the vulnerabilities. First of all, have that in your mind and apply it. So with that knowledge, you create or you instigate your parents to come on board and you create a family emergency plan. And with that, within that plan, it's detailed. You have checklists that you must check off and ensure that you have certain things. Also, within that plan, you have routes in terms of your home, where you evacuate, who's in charge of what, who's in charge of turning lights on, who's in charge of getting this particular supply, and also each person should be able to alternate and know what each other's role are. So that is important when you speak about personal preparedness and as a family. And with that, you can now go forward, and if something were to happen, you know how to respond, meaning that you would have done a drill at home. Yes, we do drills at school, at our workplaces, we do a lot of fire drills, a lot of quick evacuations, but you sort of like do a mini exercise at home on a frequent basis to test your family, to test your surroundings, you know. And it can't be for one hazard. We live in a multi-hazard society.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not just physical hazards, you know, we are prone to pandemics, we are prone to chemical hazards. These things must also be explored when you're speaking about overall disaster preparedness.
Okay.
So these things you take into consideration, you test it, you exercise it, and you see your gaps, and most frequently you review it, you look at it again, and yeah.
Okay.
My answer is not going to be as good as that one, so I just let you know for now, right? But what I would say,
You add value. You're adding value.
I'll add to that. What I would say is, well, because I've made it a responsibility of mine to be aware of all these things going on, because I have to give out these messages to, you know, people that listen to me and stuff. So I am more aware than the average young person. But one thing that I do is in my family, I kind of look for the people that may not be as interested in it as getting prepared as me, and I look out for them first. So I'm not going to call a name, but there's somebody much older than me. I said, well, we always have things ready. We always have batteries, flashlights, canned foods, water, anything like that. We have that ready from the beginning of the hurricane season, always, right? So I called somebody that's not part of my household, and she's a lot older than everybody in my family, but in my house, anybody in my household. But I called her and I just said, well, are you ready? She said, ready for what? And I said, are you ready for the system coming? She said, why? I said, because it's coming. It's coming, right? She said, no, it's not. And I was like, but like, you can see it coming to, but then to make matters worse, it didn't really come, right? So I mean, thinking about her, she went through that same scenario, right? Of somebody calling her for the last 30, 40 years and nothing happened. You understand? So that kind of, so the same kind of cry wolf culture that Bajans think it is, where the Met Office is kind of saying things are coming when they're not coming. I have to kind of look out for them. And I do hear a lot of younger people that are kind of saying that they have to look out for the older ones too. That because they're vulnerable, and for whatever reason they don't act as quickly. We need to kind of pick up for them, especially in the family setting. So yeah.
There's actually quite a bit that we need to talk about here, because that whole matter of the perception of the crying wolf is something that we need to definitely address, and because we recognize that the Caribbean islands are very small. And if you look at those storms, they are huge. Yes. And then and it is true that the science related to meteorology, there are so many parameters that really affects where that storm goes, because they actually are dependent upon other forces to move them. So depending on what's happening, they may move in a particular direction, but then they may not affect like a Barbados, but certainly it will affect a neighbor. So I think is that understanding that we have to recognize, because it's obviously worse to be not prepared. And I wanted to talk. Yes, I see that you want to come in on this conversation, but I do have a question for you before you probably ask your question, and that is really on the whole matter of the personal preparedness again. I know that you DEM have been promoted even in the DOs and in the schools a grab bag. So if you can tell me, if you had to pack a grab bag, Margo, what would you put in that grab bag?
Now, a first aid kit is basic, but all of us don't have cancer, diabetes, heart disease, children. So more than likely, you would have the basic in the first aid kit, plus the additional, which would be the medication for it. You may have a child who have to use some special medication, and systems don't just come on us. we get notice. It's not like an earth tremor. It's not like an implosion where something just explodes. We get warning. In that, Rabbi, you can't put too many things in it to make it too heavy, I think. And you have to first have that family plan, whereas we will know if something happened, and we all know about the structure we live in. Now we have to look at the extended family, those persons who are vulnerable, that do not want to move, that you have to go when the high winds come to reach. So that person will not have a pack to go. But how much can you put? You have a baby, you have to put Pampers, you have to put milk, you have to have your water, you have to have your medication, your flashlights, batteries, you have those things, but you still can't make yourself too heavy. This is if you're going to a shelter. But if you're staying at home, whereas I believe that families should come together to make up their mind what they plan to do in the event anything happens. And that does not happen. We wait until the system exacerbates, and we make the EM phone hurt. Now, how can you save a life if you cannot protect yours? It is not fair. So I believe that persons need to plan. And don't tell me nothing is not going to happen. I remember Thomas. We were preparing for the Prime Minister's funeral. And Thomas did what? Crept upon us. And I could still hear the screams in my ear for those persons, more so in the north. How do you deal with that? Now, you'll be trained, but how trained can you be, especially if it's at your doorstep, or it's a personal friend who has lost everything? Now, bear in mind that you were telling persons to be prepared. Oh, the public usually, DM usually get lots of licks when you say be prepared, and it shifts. It will not always shift. The other thing I wanted to say, Ellen, to Miss Hinds, the community preparedness. You know those vulnerable persons in your community, and they have family. So you have to involve them in your plan. Because I find from experience, the elderly will not move. They're fear losing everything. They're fear people will steal. I had to mobilize to so many homes, and it caused a lot of domestic dispute. It's not easy, and the good thing about it is that in the DEO, there's a policeman assigned to us. So, but obviously you can't go to him right there. Then you're doing your footwork first. But if you do your mitigation where you go through the community and you know the hazards that would happen, you try to encourage people, shift, move, come with me. It's not easy, but
But you see the issue that I have, because I mean, you're somebody of a certain level of authority, and also you're older than me. I don't say you have age. You're older than me, right? But with that comes a certain you command a certain level of respect. But for me to come and tell somebody that is 70, 80 that I care for dearly, well, you actually have to be prepared, even though you think it may not come. It may, right? It's hard for me to do that, and honestly it's scary. That the fact that this person is exposed to the elements, and I can't really do anything about it, because I can't like grab them and tell them, come.
You may have to say, Gran, I need you to come with me. Gran, please come with me. It's not safe, Gran.
And and that connection, because it's a lot about relationship as well. When you do have that relationship, you can leverage that in terms of the safety. Now, online they have made a legitimate statement that we're talking a lot about hurricanes, but they're all other hazards that we face. We have heard about the experience of the earthquake. We know that there are fires, but we also know that there are various messages that that it may be a different message depending on the hazard. I think one of the things that we can put on the table for sure is that when we talk about that grab bag, there are some things related to hurricanes that's transferable to other hazards. So
yeah.
that level of preparedness in having that grab bag that would have your basic items like your medication, etc., and your food and well, basic food. But then we had for instance the flooding. We had rains this weekend. So even though it was not a hurricane, those persons who would have had their preparations in place, probably that grab bag if they needed it, at least those things were transferable. But I want to talk about the messages because you know we had this video as well to the street talk where we had persons responding, and in those responses it was clear that they were getting the messages, but they were not necessarily connecting the message to the correct hazard. So, for instance, let me throw it out. So, for an earthquake, what do? We do what? What do we do?
Drop cover and hold on.
Drop cover and hold on.
Some people go in the
Drop cover
doorway.
and hold on. For some persons, if you do not have something that is very sturdy,
30, you can go in the
Right.
door.
But when one man go in the doorway, the other 29 men, you know what they can do, boy.
well, there's also the corners of the room that you can
Yeah.
also potentially.
Somebody asked me yesterday, explain the going under the table.
Well, it
Cover
has
your
to be a sturdy table.
Yeah.
Has to be the whole idea is that it has to be a sturdy table because you do have pictures, for instance, in emergencies overseas where, for instance, in schools where the roof collapsed, and you actually saw pictures where the tables, the desks actually were holding up the roof of the structure, and so the under the table formed a safe space for the children.
Oh,
So that was the whole context, because you want, even when you do the DCH, you're protecting your head and those type of things as well.
Yeah, and when you look at earthquakes, the hazard is fallen objects. Because as human beings, we are soft, we have soft skin. So if we were to run out of a building, the likelihood of an object falling on us, injuring us, is quite high. So when you assess your potential options, tables are very good option. But if you are, let's say, outside, then you stay away from power lines. If you're in your car, you pull aside and you stay in your car and you hold on. These things that you must be aware of your surroundings. So even if you're inside, many earthquakes produce so much deaths because of those fallen objects. Because you have the ceilings can fall, you have different objects that are attached to walls, like EV equipment, all these things in schools, all these things can create an immense hazard to children. So that is what and why they preach the go under the table, hold on. And you must hold on and cover your head as well, because again, things can fall
Yeah,
on the
is
table
one you most
and
vulnerable
can move
area.
around. So yeah.
And then there's also tsunami. So there's also a message for tsunami. So what's that message?
Well, when you tsunamis can be generated by a number of different hazards. It is usually a secondary hazard. It can be generated by an earthquake. And if you are on the coastline, you usually go to higher ground. You may hear, as they say, you may hear a loud roar. If you are at the beach and you see the sea receding to a point where you can see all the shells, all the fish, you need to run. And you need to run to higher ground.
That's right.
Where's higher ground in Barbados?
Away from the coastline. You know, Barbados goes up in terraces.
Yeah.
We do have higher ground in Barbados.
But we got like two terraces that a little bit like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That is it enough to withstand a tsunami?
The tsunami is not just one wave, as you know. So there's vertical evacuation. There's also the higher ground. So, you know, so for instance, you can say if we are in the Black Rock area, for instance, if we're talking about higher ground, we're talking up University Hill,
Cave Hill.
Cave Hill
Cave
area.
Hill.
So those are the terraces that Miss Hinds will be talking about. So this is you, and you don't stop running.
You don't.
Okay, so my question is, okay, that is a terrace to us, but is that high enough in the case of the average tsunami?
How far can you get?
How high can you go?
How far can you get?
The DEM had a walk recently based on the. You
Yeah.
want to tell us a little bit about that and what the
Part
findings?
part of the tsunami awareness program, we try to mix, the educational stuff with some health and wellness. And one of the initiatives we have is the Run Tsunami Run. It is in March every year. This is the second year running. And what we try to teach persons when they are a part of that 5K walk and run is you're actually moving from the hazard zone, the coastal area, and going into the safe area. The initial run we would have had in the whole town area. We started in Trent's in St. James, and we actually went up if we were going towards Lancaster. We would have done the coastal zone management unit would have helped us with the showing where the inundation is if we ever had a tsunami. We run various risk scenarios, and based on that, we are going to actually have a map showing you the areas that may have impact. No, that does not mean that worse can happen. The modeling is done based on the information that you have at the point in time and any prehistoric or historic events that we would have had. So next year, we are actually, when we're doing our Tsunami Awareness Month in March, we are actually going to look at a historic event when the tsunami, which was generated from an earthquake that happened in Portugal, it actually affected Barbados. And this is in the history books. It affected we have accounts where it affected the Bridgetown area. So we're going to reenact that, and hopefully you can be a part of that.
I want to be a
Wonderful.
part.
We have lots
No.
of questions here, folks, and we're almost supposed to be coming to an end. And I want to, Shanice, we want to thank you for the question you were asking about the hurricane preparedness and other ones. So we want to thank you for the question. We have a question from Natalie. Natalie is asking about damage assessment, and also about her specific question really is there any thoughts on doing search and rescue courses in the future for our volunteers?
That's a part of the training. Yeah.
Damage assessment, search and rescue, first aid, messaging handling, you name it, all those training as a DEO, you get those.
Yeah.
So Natalie, please join.
Oh, that's wonderful. As a matter of fact, there are other questions about the DEO. It says, well, I can answer this question for you. It says, if someone wants to help, what do they do? Can you please give me the number for DEM? So the number for DEM is 438-7575. 438-7575. And the other question is, how do you know who are the DEO representatives for your area?
You can go to the Department of Emergency Management's website, www.dem.gov.bb, and there on the website you will have information with respect to all the district emergency management chairs, or you can call DM 421-8516. That's also another number that we have. And you can call and you can just come and sign up.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So this has been really an interesting discussion that we've had. We've talked about a lot of things. I know that someone is also curious, if you can tell me very quickly, why was CERO changed to DEM?
CERO meant the Central Emergency Relief Organization, and the focus was more so on relief after the fact. But Department of Emergency Management takes into account our mandate now a comprehensive disaster management, preparedness, mitigation, response, recovery, the whole disaster management cycle, and we look at various hazards as well as we try to include all members of the society in that effort.
Okay, great, thank you. Marcus, we're going to wrap up now with everyone being able to give me about 45 seconds of a little bit of a sound bite before we close. But I want to ask you, do you think there's any gaps really in this disaster management information that's being shared with the youth? And, you know, how do we really address this in a very real way so that we reach this segment of the society in terms of making a difference not only for now but also for the future?
Well, I guess to go off of my point from earlier, I think that, especially with a message like this, I think that you need to collaborate with certain people that are influencers. Well, we call them influencers, but just people that are young and they have a following and they have some credibility amongst our generation. If you collaborate with them, and let me just call some names, like there's Kev's Politics on Twitter, there's Chris RK, there's DJ Puffy, there's even somebody like Trey Breezy, who is a real jokester. By the end of the day, he's somebody with a huge following and can reach a lot of people, and he's one of those guys that has a good head on his shoulders, and a lot of people like that. I think that if you collaborate with those people, it will be very easy for you to get the message across, but in a very interesting and engaging way.
Okay, thank you so much, Marcus. So it's still up to the panelists to just give me your 45-second soundbite to wrap up. What would be your main message that you would want to deliver to those who are listening?
My main message is that you cannot rely too much on entities. You need to take a lot of responsibility on yourself in terms of what you do. And with respect to that, I think that the more you practice what we call a 72-hour protocol, meaning that there are 72 hours that you need to be self-sustaining as an individual, because first responders may not be able to access your location because of ailments or because of obstacles. So take that into consideration. And also, as we're speaking about the youth, in my opinion, if you look at children, you need to engage them in action exercises that can help them understand the process. Meaning have kids do exercises at your school place that deals with, hey, let's make them into a game, or let's make it into a competition where you map hazards around your school. Things like that engages their brains and engages them in a very meaningful way where they are active doing it. I think that really gets into their mindsets and for sustainability when they go forward. So in my opinion, children, again, are protagonists, and you need to target their inner sense of getting that out and getting that action.
Okay, great. Margo, from you?
The District Emergency Organization is a structured organization, and everything happens in a community, which means if your house is burning, the neighbor helps. That person is volunteering. We need more persons to get on board and play a more active part in preparing themselves in the event it should spill over, whereas we wouldn't have to do as much. So we need those volunteers. You don't have to come to all the meetings, just be there, accessible where we need you.
Okay, this is a call for one and all to join the district emergency organizations. There's great opportunities and you can play your part. So any final words from you, Kerry and Marcus?
Yeah, disaster management is all of our business. We live in a world where we're affected by hazards, whether that be man-made or natural. And I want persons to be curious enough to find out more about the discipline, more about how you can help, how you can assist. Everybody has some skill that can add some value to what we're trying to do at the national level. We're trying to build a more resilient Barbados, and I would encourage everybody to be prepared and be aware of all the hazards that would affect them, and try to find out how you can help yourself. At the end of the day, it is a shared responsibility, and we really need your support. Government can't do it alone. DEM can't do it alone. The community volunteers, we need more persons coming out in the community, and we need younger persons. You may be elderly, and you can assist as well. Everybody, you can be disabled, you can assist as well. Everybody can support the effort, because at the end of the day, we want to see a more resilient Barbados.
Wonderful. Marcus?
Well, convincing Bajans to kind of, take action and prepare shouldn't be like trying to convince an atheist that God exists. It shouldn't be that hard. And I don't think it is that hard. All that needs to happen is just take these incremental steps. Don't worry about whether it's hurricane season or not. Take one thing that is in the list of preparations for you to do and focus on that. Make sure, and then in time you would add on things until it's part of your lifestyle that you carry out 12 months in a year. And I think that the same way that the people of Barbados would make these baby steps, I see that DEM is making these steps as well with something like this. This platform was a very good idea. And I know that Danielle and everyone else at DEM will do a great job in coming up with more new ideas. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for an exciting panel as we have been having real talk in the face of danger, organized by the Department of Emergency Management. We want to thank you so much as the viewers for joining us and for sending your questions. We also want to thank the European Union for the sponsorship of this event, and we certainly look forward to having another conversation with you in the future as we look at our own personal preparedness for a more resilient Barbados. Thank you.
Disasters can happen at any time with very little and sometimes no warning. Hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, flood, volcanoes, tornadoes, and fire are a fresh reminder that hazards can strike at any time, and no area of the country is immune. Whenever a hazard is approaching or occurring, take the necessary precautions to keep you and your family safe and sound. Pay close attention to all bulletins and updates from the Department of Emergency Management, and make sure you have an adequate supply of non-perishable items, medication, and plenty of water, as well as knowing the location of your nearest emergency shelter. Disasters can occur in the blink of an eye. The right precautions could save your life. Prepare and be aware. This message is brought to you by the Department of Emergency Management.